Okay, we are back again. Continue, continuing on our study on um, Acts chapter 1, verse 11. We are looking at the parousia of Christ and as to whether it reflects or it the reality lies in the interpretation of the futurists, because they believe that there's going to be a physical coming of Christ. You see, Christ was, but I have told you that the apocalypse of Christ, Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, that is apocalypse of Christ. During the first advent of Christ, his incarnation, when he first came through Mary, he came as a servant, he came that through him, redemption of Israel will be realized. He's going to, bring them out of that bondage, which was the effect of the law, the curse. He's going to erase that curse upon Israel, and he's going to, breathe in them. He's going to wash them, and he's going to bring them to light. And that is what Paul said in Colossians 1:12 and 13. Okay, so the apocalypse of Christ, the second coming of Christ, is to reveal him as God and not as man in the flesh. Because the purpose is to, you know, pronounce judgment against the unbelieving Jews. Okay, that the world at large. Because remember, in Matthew chapter 23, verse 31 following, it says that upon this generation will all this come upon, including Adam, including the slain of Abel, righteous Abel, okay, as well as Berechiah, whom they murdered in the temple altar. All these things is going to come upon his contemporary generation in the first century. Now, why would God punish Israel for the crime um, Cain committed? Why is he going to do that? So it tells you that that judgment of AD 70 is not a local event. It had global ramification. It had global, you know, uh, effect. Okay, because Abel wasn't slain by Israel. However, they are going to be punished for that cause. Okay, so it cannot be that uh, that judgment of AD 70 was a local event. Now, let's let ask ourselves this question: where was Christ born? Where was Christ born? You want to see whether it is the geography that matters, or the magnitude of the event that matters. Christ was not born in Ghana, was not born in US, he was born in old covenant Israel, not the current Israel, by the way. I'm not talking about the current Israel. They are the Zionists, whatever. You see, they are not the original Hebrew. No, they are not. These are European Kazan people who have occupied the land and killing the Palestinians. You're talking about the biblical Israel. So that is where Jesus was born and he died there. So, of what relevance is the death of Christ to us here in Ghana and elsewhere? If the geography of an event matters, then upon what basis do we have to worry ourselves about someone who was slain even over 2,000 years ago and not even in Ghana? So it tells you that the death of Christ, even though it occurred in Jerusalem, it has global impact. So it is not the geography. So the fact that that judgment occurred or took place in Jerusalem does not mean it isn't a global one. This is what we have to understand. It is not the geography of an event, okay, but the impact, the magnitude. That is what matters, and that is where we have to look at. Anyway, so as we said, in our previous video, with regards to this topic, today we are going to continue. What Daniel said will be the issue. That is that when Christ comes with the clouds of heaven, will be the time of the dominion and glory and the kingdom. Now remember, that glory was lost, after no, after the fall of man, right? In Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, entrance into the garden where stood the tree of life was, blocked, so that man could not go into God's presence again. Why? It was as a result of sin. So the sin became enemy of man. And once sin is imputed, death arises. Okay. Paul said in Romans chapter 7, verse 9 that once upon a time I was without the law, but once the commandment came, sin revived and I died. This is what we are talking about. Okay, so it means that in the absence of sin, there's no death. And that is the sin Christ came to destroy, so that salvation and freedom will be upon humankind. If you read first John chapter 2, chapter 3, verse 8, Hebrew chapter 2, verse 13, 14, all is going to tell you that he's going to tell you the purpose of Christ. Christ came that he says that through his death, he who holds the power of death will be destroyed. That is Satan. So Christ's death defeated, that one who is holding that power. You can also talk about Revelation chapter 1, verse 18. It says that he has the keys of Hades. Now, Hades is euphemism for death. So, in other words, he has now usurped the key of death. That is why those who are in Christ are not subject to death. If you read John chapter 8, verse 51, it says that if you obey my command, you shall not see death. Right? You are not going to see death. Anyway, we see the thing keep coming and keep digressing, but that is now we are going to remain focused on this text. Okay, so that is the case. So now I have the time of the kingdom being the time of the parousia of Christ. This we don't have to miss this. And once we see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven, it indicated what? Judgment, or it indicates judgment, just as we have in Isaiah 34, 1 to 5, judgment against Edom, and that of Egypt and Babylon in Isaiah chapter 13, verse 10 and verse 13, as well as Isaiah chapter 19, verse 1. Okay, so once we see the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven, it's element of what? Judgment. Now let's look at this. Let's look at this text in Isaiah chapter 62. Let's see what we have there. Isaiah chapter 62. Let's see what we have there. In Isaiah chapter 62, we have, let's see, verse 11, right? 11 and 12. So it goes there. Now, like we said, indeed, the Lord has proclaimed to the end of the world, say to the daughter of Zion, surely your salvation is coming. Now, Christ was purpose. Now, remember in Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, he said that he was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. In John chapter number 10 and verse 5 and 6, it also says the same thing. However, you see, this is what we have to understand, because there are a lot of people who are making this statement that based on Matthew chapter 15, verse 24, Christ only came to the house of Israel. The house of Israel. Now, what I mean by house of Israel was the 10 northern kingdom, who had divorced, whom God has divorced. God has given them a bill of divorce. Remember in Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 8, he has given them a bill of divorce. And in 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 15 following, as a result of their idolatry, you see, when God married them, he gave them a command through the law that I am your Lord, your God. Do not worship any other God. But what did the 10 northern kingdom do? Led by, is it Rehoboam or Jeroboam? One of Solomon's son. Okay, let them out because they worshipped a different. They married. In other words, they married a different God. So they were given a bill of divorce. However, if you read Hosea chapter 1 and Hosea chapter 2, and even in Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 11 following, it's going to tell you that I am not going to remain anointed forever. Just acknowledge your sin, repent, and return to me, you house of Israel. You understand? So Christ was purposed to to bring them together, to bring them under one roof, and to bring them under one umbrella, and that is the purpose essence of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 14, 15 thereabout. See, says that through Christ he has joined us all together and to make us all. Now, I was trying to refute this Israel only people. Now remember, when they went into captivity, when they went into the nations, when the ten northern kingdom, they entered into they went beyond the walls of Israel, if you please, into the Gentile land. So in Hosea chapter 8, verse 8, Israel became like the Gentiles. Okay, so in Romans chapter 9, verse 24, it says that the call of the Gentile is the call of Israel. And also in Acts chapter 11, verse 18, it says that God said that He's going to save Israel exactly the same way He has uh, saved the Gentiles. What it means is that He's now going to save, Israel, not according to the law, but according to the grace, okay, through which the Gentiles have been saved. Okay, so you cannot, say that because it was said that He's going to come to the household of, going to the house of Israel. The Gentiles are not part of the salvation that Christ came to, you know, established. No, we are part of it. The Gentiles are part of it. Even the mystery of the gospel has the element of the Gentiles in it. They are one in Israel with respect to the Commonwealth, the salvation and everything. If you read Ephesians chapter 3, verse 5, verse 3, 4, 5, 6, it's going to tell you the mystery about the mystery of the gospel. Okay, so in Isaiah chapter 62, verse 11, it says, indeed, surely your salvation is coming. Behold, his reward is with him and his work before him. Now, what the Bible says is that he's going to execute judgment, he's going to apportion to everyone according to his work. You understand? So here, once again, we have the coming of the Christ being the time of the salvation. Now, the time of the salvation is the time of resurrection. Because what is salvation? From death as a result of sin to life through what? Baptism. Because baptism is the situation whereby one buries his or her sin beneath the waters of baptism into and raised into a new body and raised to enter into a new body. Because whilst you are up, you put on a new body, and that means that the old things are no more remembered. You are now a new creation. So Isaiah has also spoken about the parousia of Christ, okay, being the time of judgment as well. So it means that in Acts chapter 1, verse 11, when Christ comes, will be the time of salvation and also the time of judgment. So now, if Christ has not come, it means that the salvation is not a current reality because it is only Christ who is going to come with that salvation. In Hebrews chapter 9, right, verse 28, I believe, it says that now those who are who are eagerly waiting for him, he will come a second time apart from sin unto salvation. So it means that when Christ returns after completing his atonement, his atoning work will be the time of salvation. Okay, that is the type of the work of the high priest in Ezekiel. Oh, sorry, in Leviticus chapter 9, verse 20 to 23. They will have to go into the most holy, and they will have to come back to proclaim blessings upon the people. But when the high priest does not return, it means that on that day there's no atonement. So Christ, also being our high priest, Hebrew chapter 9, must also go behind the curtains into the most holy. Eh? Hebrews 6, 18, 19, so that he went behind the curtains on our behalf And in Hebrew chapter 9, verse 20, 24, 25, 26, it says that he appeared before God in heaven. So he entered heaven on our behalf. So he must also return. That is the work of a high priest. So if Christ has not come, it means that salvation is not the current reality. This is how we have to understand it. We have to understand the whole situation. Okay. You see, I don't care, see what you have been made to understand or believe, because I once believed this, but upon my own personal studies, I have come. This is the reality of my new awareness. With respect to the parousia, I am not looking for any parousia, because I believe that our parousia in the New Testament, there's just one parousia, and that is the parousia Christ said it is going to take place in His own contemporary generation. Matthew 16, we are going to go there. Matthew 16:28 and Matthew 24, 29 to 34, in that generation. So either Christ lied or Christ did not lie. I will refrain from calling Christ a liar. Anyway, so we are back again. We see Christ coming, the time of the salvation and time of judgment. Okay. And also, if you go to Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 10, we also have similar language there. Oh, this is very. Anyway, so because of time, we are not going to go there. You have to do your own search. So read Isaiah chapter 40, verse 10. It's import of Isaiah chapter 62, verse 11 and verse 12. Now, let's go to the New Testament and to the book of Matthew, as I said. Now, remember, now let's go there and let's see what is there. 16, verse 20, 27. Now, it says that for the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father. This is the same coming of Act chapter 2, so Act chapter 1 and verse 11, and Daniel chapter 7, 13, 14, and Isaiah 62, verse 11 and verse 12. We are not talking about multiple comings of Christ, because Paul and the apostolate and Christ said that all their subject of their doctrine of eschatology is the one which Moses and the prophet said will come or will occur. So they did not say anything different from what the prophet and Moses said. So it means that we cannot have a New Testament eschatology different from what the prophet have said. That is how we have to understand it. So in verse 27 of Matthew chapter 16, it says that for the Son of Man will come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he will reward each one according to his work. Now, what did Isaiah 62 verse 12 said? He will come with his reward, with his reward in his hand, and he's going to apportion to everyone according to his work. So it means that Jesus quoted Isaiah chapter 62 verse 11 and 12 when he was discussing the time of his coming and the time of his judgment. So let us take note of this. Now you see, he's saying that he's going to come in the glory of his Father. So it means that he's going to come in a manner as he has seen the Father judged in the past, which has never been bodily, physical God. However, it's been through instrumentality, what we call the theophany, that is manifestation of God through historical events. Okay, it is not a physical. God has never physically come to fight against any nation. Now, verse 28, he said that assuredly, now Christ is assuring us, I am not saying it. Assuredly, I say to you, there are some standing here. You see, let us try to put ourselves into the shoes of the apostles, his audience, his primary audience. Assuredly, I say to you, there are some standing here who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Now, you see, if Christ says that, if this is what Christ said, and you are telling me that Christ has not come, then I don't know how you are going to buttress your point against this, or how you are going to convince your audience to accept the fact that even though he said this, but he has not come yet. Then which coming again is Christ going to come? If this is not a coming, there are Christ. No, this is Christ speaking, and he's assuring his audience. Now, you see, the reason is that he's going to commission them, and in the course of that, uh, uh, what do you call it, the publishing of the gospel, okay, to the time of the end, the apostles are going to face afflictions and tribulation. So he even told them, he even gave them a promise in uh, now, of course, the tribulation. If you read First Peter chapter 5 verse 1, Revelation chapter 1 verse 9 and 10, and then First Corinthians chapter 4 verse 9 following. See, the apostles indeed confirmed that they are in that tribulation, which was foretold by the mouth of prophet and Christ, because that tribulation was that which Daniel chapter 12 and 1 and Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 6 and 7, what we call the Jacob trouble, they have foretold this. And Christ also quoted these two prophets in Matthew chapter 24 and 21. He posited that tribulation in that context, in the context of the fall of Jerusalem. So he promised them that assuredly, you don't worry, whatever happens, just go on, move on. Assuredly, I say to you. Now let me even read the Matthew. I'll come back to this, but let me go to the Matthew chapter 10 and verse 23. Now it says that now verse 23. What do you have? Time. It said that when they persecute you, now it said that and you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved. That is import of Revelation 2:10. But 23, when they persecute you, the apostles in this city of Israel, flee to another, for I showed you. Now the same assurance. I say to you, Jesus is assuring them, I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel, not the current Israel, but old covenant Israel. Cities of it before the Son of Man comes. What do you again you want? So did Christ lie? If you are looking for Christ to come in the future, did Christ lie when he said that he is going to come before the apostles have gone through the cities of old ancient Israel? I don't think Christ said that. And I wouldn't say, you see, I wouldn't like to call Christ a liar. I wouldn't want to say that. So verse 28 of Matthew chapter 16, see, which is an import of Act chapter 1, verse 11. Assuredly, I say to you, the same assurance again. There are some standing here. Now, who are they? Who are those who are standing there? Where are they now? Who shall not taste death? Have they tasted death, or they are still living? Who shall not taste death till they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom? Now, remember, the kingdom of God does not come with observation. Luke chapter 17, verse 20, 21, 22 does not come with ocular visibility. You cannot see it with your naked eye. Just as he told the high priest that his kingdom is not of this creation. In Hebrew chapter 9, verse 11 and 12, he said, my kingdom is eternal one. And in Hebrew chapter 11, verse 12, he said that his kingdom is not of this creation. So how are you then going to see this kingdom? But this is the kingdom Christ is going to come to sit in. And that will be the time of judgment. So how do you then expect a physical Christ to sit in a spiritual kingdom? Is that possible? A physical being to sit in a spiritual kingdom, is that possible? No. The kingdom is spiritual, and Christ is going to come in his pre-incarnation form. In John chapter 4, I said that God is spirit. Christ is spirit. So he's going to come in that spiritual form. What you saw on the mountain of transfiguration, Luke chapter 9, as well as Matthew chapter 17, it's how Christ lived in heaven. That transformation, he transfigured, he left that bodily stature into his eternal stature. That is why he warned the apostles not to tell anyone. That is how he's going to come. It's the picture of the parousia. It is not a physical thing that is going to come. When Elisha prayed to God that God should open the eye of his servant. When the Philistines were about to attack Israel, he opened his eye and he saw that legions of angels. They were about to defend Israel. So you need a second eye to see beyond the physical realm. You understand? So we do not have, but it says that through faith we ought to believe that these things are a current reality. Okay, we don't walk by faith. Sorry, we don't walk by sight, but we walk by faith. So to those of you who are looking for a physical kingdom, that is not possible. So it means that Acts chapter 1 verse 11 cannot be a physical coming of Christ. It rather expresses the manner of his coming. That is home trompone. In our subsequent video, we are going to talk about that. That is how Christ is going to come. And this is what we have to embrace as reality. It's assurance that those who are just as the angel said, this man that you have seen him go, you guys are also going to see him come in the same manner.